He loved her enough to risk everything: his name, his freedom, his soul. But what he didn't know was that the woman he trusted the most held the one secret that could destroy them both. The air was thick with a midsummer humidity that clung to everything it touched. In the quiet hills of Vermont, nestled between wild pines and maples, stood a remote artist's residency where few knew her name and fewer cared to ask. But Ariana Blake wasn't there to be noticed. She was there to disappear. Ariana had once lived beneath glittering chandeliers and champagne-soaked nights in Manhattan. Her artwork, vast emotional landscapes bursting with color and pain, had hung in private galleries and been praised by critics who used words like ethereal and raw. But that was before the fire, before the scandal, before Daniel Royce. Daniel had been everything she wasn't supposed to want. A journalist with a dangerous eye for corruption and a mouth that told truths people paid to keep buried. When they met at a benefit gala, he in a wrinkled suit, she in a backless silver gown, it should have been a one-night mistake. Instead, it was a match set to spark. In the 2 years that followed, Daniel became her obsession and her ruin. His exposés brought him enemies: CEOs, politicians, people with reach and money, and silence to protect. Ariana's name was tied to his in every article and every interview. She painted his pain. He made her visible in ways that terrified her. When he vanished just weeks after promising her a ring, the world accused her before the police even knocked on her door. She hadn't spoken to anyone since that night. Now, 6 months later, Ariana lived in room 7 of the Stone River Residency, a place designed for isolation and art. Her days were painted in silence. She walked the woods at dawn. She sketched at noon. She stared at a blank canvas for hours every evening, unable to bring herself to touch it. Not since the last one had caught fire. Not since that threatening note had arrived. He told the wrong story. Don't become chapter 2. Ariana didn't sleep much. Shadows on the porch moved too often. Footsteps in the hallway stopped outside her door. But when she reported it, the director, a reclusive sculptor named Mallory, dismissed it as paranoia. "You're safe here," she'd said. Too quickly. Safe wasn't a feeling Ariana recognized anymore. Then came Julian Hale. He arrived on stormy Tuesday just after midnight, dragging a battered suitcase and a cello case too pristine for a man with muddy boots. His eyes were sea glass green, and his handshake was warm, practiced. He claimed to be a composer from Montreal, needing quiet for a symphony. But something in the way he asked her name twice made Ariana's stomach twist. She didn't give it. Not the first night. Julian didn't press. Over the days that followed, they shared glances over shared coffee and uncomfortable meals. He played haunting melodies at dusk, notes that crawled into Ariana's ribs and stayed there. She caught herself sketching again. His silhouette, the curve of his fingers, the sadness in his smile. But things around her began to unravel. The light above her studio flickered constantly. Someone began unlocking her door at night. Her sketchbook went missing. Then, beneath her bed, she found a page not hers drawn in charcoal with Daniel's face screaming behind bars. Julian denied seeing anything. But the next day, he offered her a cigarette without her asking. She hadn't smoked since Daniel disappeared. He knew. When Ariana confronted him that night under a flickering porch bulb, Julian didn't lie. He said, "I'm not here by accident." She backed away, heart sprinting. "Then why are you here?" "To protect you," he said, and she almost believed him. That night, unable to sleep, Ariana crept to the common room and searched his suitcase. Inside wasn't clothes or sheet music. It was a file, news clippings, photos, her name circled in red, Daniel's charred apartment, a hidden page, a transcript, a recording. "If anything happens to me," Daniel's voice said, "start with Malcolm Troy. And if they get to Ariana, burn everything." She staggered backward, a sob rising in her throat. When Julian appeared behind her moments later, she screamed, but he didn't attack. He took her hand and led her to the fireplace. He threw the file into the flames. "They're watching," he whispered, eyes glassy. "I made a deal to get close, but I didn't know they'd send me here to finish it." Ariana ran into the woods, barefoot, breath catching on the cold. Branches whipped her arms. Rain began to fall. Somewhere behind her, someone followed. Not Julian. He was calling her name now, begging. But the other footsteps were heavier, slower. She reached the edge of the cliff behind the lodge and turned. A man stood there in a black raincoat, his face hidden beneath the hood. He raised a phone and played a voice recording. It was Daniel again. I never should have trusted Ariana. She's the reason they know. A lie. It had to be. The man took a step forward. Come with me, he said, or this time we burn your whole past. But before Ariana could move, Julian tackled him from behind. The phone flew. The man slammed into a tree. They fought brutally, Julian bleeding, the stranger laughing. Then a gunshot cracked the night. Ariana screamed. The men fell. Julian crumpled, and the forest went still. The sun had barely risen when Maya awoke to the sound of rustling papers and hurried footsteps echoing from the living room. She wrapped herself in the silk robe Adam had gifted her last anniversary and stepped out, finding him rifling through drawers and opening cabinets with unusual desperation. His face turned pale when he noticed her standing by the doorway, his hands trembling as he tried to explain he was looking for a missing receipt. But Maya's eyes scanned the scattered documents and landed on an envelope that had slipped under the couch, one marked confidential and addressed to a private investigator. Adam rushed to snatch it, but Maya got there first. Her fingers shook as she pulled out photographs, grainy yet damning, of her sitting in a cafe with an old friend, Jacob, who had recently moved back into town. The timestamp was from 3 weeks ago, the very day she had mentioned a spontaneous meetup. Adam's voice cracked as he accused her of hiding the truth. But Maya's disbelief overrode the hurt. You hired someone to follow me? After everything? Adam's silence screamed louder than any answer. The weight of his distrust bruised her more than any betrayal. Maya threw the envelope back at him, her words sharp as shards of glass. You didn't ask. You judged. You assumed. And now you've broken something that may never be repaired. Adam watched her walk away, her footsteps deliberate, her back stiff with pride and pain. The house that once echoed with laughter now swallowed their voices in an ocean of silence. That day passed in isolation, each locked in different rooms of the same house, drowning in unspoken grief. As the days trudged on, the air between them grew heavier. Adam tried to make amends. He left notes on her desk, her mirror, her pillow, apologies that Maya read but never answered. She couldn't understand why the man who once held her hand through every storm had turned into someone who believed the worst about her without a word. But one night, as Maya went to collect laundry from the guest room, she found a crumpled shirt in the hamper, a lipstick stain smudged across the collar, a shade she never wore. Her heart stuttered. She checked the closet. A scarf, unfamiliar to her, lay tucked behind Adam's suits. Questions slammed into her like a wave. Was this why he was so paranoid about her? Guilt? Projection? Maya's hands clenched. She didn't confront him immediately. Instead, she turned inward, retracing the past few weeks, his erratic behavior, his long absences under the guise of work, his mood swings. What if this had never been about Jacob at all? She contacted the same private investigator whose name was on the envelope. Under a different alias, she requested a discreet surveillance report on Adam Evans. The PI agreed, surprised by the sudden role reversal. Meanwhile, Maya played the part of the distant but stable wife. She hosted dinners, smiled during public appearances, and returned to work with renewed focus. But every time she looked at Adam, she saw not just her husband, but a man with secrets. One evening, the investigator called. His voice was tense. You should see this in person. Come to the address I'll send. Now. Maya's heart raced as she pulled into a quiet, upscale neighborhood. The investigator met her at a corner and handed her a tablet. On the screen was live footage Adam entering a house with a woman in her early 30s, her laughter ringing out as she pulled him into a kiss. Maya didn't cry. Not yet. She drove home in silence. She walked into their bedroom, opened a drawer, and found the old photograph of their engagement day. Her eyes lingered on their smiles, now memories faded by betrayal. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she wrote. She poured every emotion, every crack in her heart, every truth into a letter, not to Adam, but to herself. A declaration of pain, strength, and resolve. The next morning, Maya served breakfast as normal. She even laughed at Adam's nervous jokes. But inside, a plan had begun. She wasn't going to scream. She wasn't going to beg. She would reclaim herself methodically, intelligently, and with a grace that Adam wouldn't see coming. She reached out to Jacob under the guise of reconnecting. Not romantically, strategically. Jacob was a respected attorney who had once specialized in corporate investigations. Maya revealed her suspicions not just of infidelity, but of financial misconduct. She had long ignored Adam's business affairs, but now every detail mattered. Jacob agreed to help. They began reviewing joint accounts, property holdings, and business transactions. Slowly, a picture began to form of offshore accounts, forged signatures, and misused trust funds. Maya's name was tied to some of them. If anything surfaced, she could be implicated. This was more than betrayal. It was entrapment. Maya knew she had to act fast. The man she once trusted with her life was capable of pulling her into a storm that could ruin her future. But she couldn't go to the police without evidence that cleared her completely. Jacob advised patience, precision. Maya found herself walking a tightrope, living beside a man who smiled like nothing had changed, while she quietly dismantled the facade he had built. Every moment was dangerous. Every slip could be fatal to her freedom. One night, Adam noticed her looking tired and tense. He asked if she was okay. She forced a smile. Just work stress. Nothing to worry about. But in her mind, the countdown had begun. She had given him years, loyalty, love. Now she would give him what he had earned, the reckoning of a woman underestimated. The sound of distant thunder mirrored the turmoil inside Zayn as he walked away from the hospital. His fingers trembled, not from the cold but from the truth he had just learned. He had never imagined that the woman he loved, the woman who had looked him in the eye with softness and warmth, could carry such a burden. Adil's confession had only scratched the surface. Zayn knew this was far from over. He had to uncover everything, no matter what it cost. He didn't return to his apartment. Instead, he drove aimlessly through the night, trying to calm the storm in his chest. His thoughts were consumed with memories of Ariba, her laughter, her sudden silences, and the way she seemed lost sometimes. Pieces of a puzzle he had never noticed before now began to fall into place. He pulled over near a quiet overlook, staring down at the glittering city lights below, wondering how many secrets could hide behind such beauty. The next morning, Zayn made a call. He needed help, discreet, professional help. His old friend, Chavez, worked in cyber forensics and had access to the kind of resources Zayn now required. By midday, Chavez was in Zayn's living room, scanning Ariba's name through secure databases. "Are you sure you want to know everything?" Chavez asked. Zayn didn't hesitate. "Yes, all of it." Within an hour, the results poured in. The files were extensive. Zayn read through them slowly, carefully, feeling his breath tighten with each page. Ariba had changed her identity 5 years ago. Her original name had been Mahira Noor. She had been involved in a high-profile corporate whistleblower case that had gone public in another country. The company she exposed collapsed, and the CEO, who had connections with criminal networks, was arrested but later released due to lack of evidence. Mahira had been placed in a witness protection program. That explained her scars, her secrecy, and her decision to hide even from the men she loved. Zayn sat silently for a long time. His heart ached for her, not with anger, but with the pain of understanding. She had carried this alone, bearing the weight of fear and guilt. And yet, she had chosen love. She had chosen him, but the past wasn't done with her. That night, Zayn's phone rang. It was an unknown number. He answered, expecting perhaps a telemarketer, but instead, a voice cold, calculated spoke. "Walk away from her, or you'll both disappear." Zayn didn't speak. He didn't have to. The call ended, but the warning stayed, sharp and loud. In the silence, he immediately drove to the hospital, only to find Ariba's room empty. The nurse at the desk was flustered. She checked out. A man came to pick her up. She said he was family. Zayn's heart pounded. "Did you see where they went?" "No, but she left this for you." The nurse handed him a note. It was handwritten. Zayn, I'm sorry. I can't let you get hurt because of me. I have to disappear. Again. I'll always love you. Please don't look for me. He crushed a paper in his hand. He knew she was trying to protect him, but this time, he wasn't going to let her face it alone. With Chavez's help, Zayn began tracing the call. It had bounced through multiple proxies, but Chavez was good. Within 24 hours, they had a location, a remote warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Zayn arrived just after midnight. The warehouse loomed like a monster in the dark. He moved quietly, avoiding the cameras, until he found a small window. Inside, he saw her. Ariba Mahira was sitting on a chair, her hands tied, a bruise blooming on her cheek. He counted 2 guards and a man pacing in front of her. The man spoke low, but Zayn caught the words. You thought you could disappear, that the past wouldn't find you? Zayn's jaw tightened. He signaled Chavez, who was waiting outside with backup. In moments, the quiet exploded into action. Smoke grenades filled the warehouse, and masked figures moved in. Shots were fired. Chaos reigned. Zayn burst through the smoke, heading straight for her. Ariba looked up, eyes wide with disbelief. You came for me, she whispered. Always, he replied. Cutting the ropes, they ran together, bullets whizzing past them. By the time they reached the outside, the attackers had fled, and police sirens wailed in the distance. Safe, but not whole. Later, in a safe house arranged by Chavez, Ariba finally told him everything. The trial, the threats, the years in hiding, and how she had planned to leave the country again to keep him safe. But I couldn't, she said, tears streaming down her face. I couldn't leave you. Zayn held her tightly. Then don't. Let's face this together. No more running. She nodded, the smallest smile breaking through. Together. But even as they embraced, Chavez entered, his face grim. They're not done, he said. We traced one of the attackers. He's not just a thug. He's ex-intelligence, which means this goes deeper than we thought. Zayn's eyes met Ariba's. The storm wasn't over. It had just begun. The morning sun filtered in through the frosted windows of the cabin nestled deep within the snow-draped Carpathian woods. Ilara stirred quietly, her fingers brushing against the hollow side of the bed where Tristan had slept. He was gone. Not far. He had never truly been far, but there was always a silence to him before a storm, and she feared what that silence meant today. She rose, wrapped in the wool shawl woven with her late mother's initials, and made her way to the old writing desk. There, a letter lay, sealed not in wax but with blood. She did not flinch. She had seen enough in these past weeks to numb even the most primal fears. But something in her chest thudded as she unfolded the page and read the hurried scrawl. They know. Meet me at the bell tower before sundown. Do not trust anyone, not even yourself. She inhaled sharply. Tristan's paranoia had deepened ever since the revelation at the Glass Manor. The twins, their identities, how one had impersonated the other to frame Ilara for the embassy fire. That entire plot had felt like a gothic play, but it was real. Too real. Ilara remembered how Tristan had looked when he confronted Marcus. Broken. Guilty. Ashamed. By midday, she had packed the few essentials she trusted: her mother's pendant, a vial of powdered belladonna, and the carved ring Tristan had given her the night they made their secret vows. She wore it now, not as a token of love but as a shield against betrayal. Every step through the dense woodland to the bell tower echoed with the weight of lies uncovered in the past weeks. When Ilara reached the tower, shadows had already started to lengthen across the frozen hills. She stepped inside, boots crunching over shards of shattered stained glass. The air was thick with age and silence, but her ears caught at a footstep above. She ascended, cautious. Tristan stood at the very top, silhouetted against the dying light, his face unreadable. A gun lay on the ledge beside him, glinting coldly. You came, he said without turning. I always do, she replied. He turned slowly, eyes dark and hollow. You know what I found, Ilara? She said nothing. There were no more lies left. She had nothing to offer now but the truth. It wasn't Marcus, Tristan continued. The man behind all of it, the one who orchestrated the switch, the fire, the death orders. It was Counselor Riven. Elara's knees almost buckled. Riven, the man who had mentored her, who had sworn loyalty to her family after the fall of the House of Vera, the man who sat beside her at every strategy meeting. He used me, Tristan whispered. He used my love for you, turned it into leverage, and I let him, until I found this. He handed her a folder stained, torn, but inside it, undeniable proof. Riven's signature on the order to eliminate Elara after the embassy incident. The directive for the twin deception. Even financial records tracing hush payments to Marcus. Elara stared at it, her mouth dry. So what happens now? Tristan looked at her, eyes glassy. Now I disappear. They'll come for me. I betrayed the council to protect you. She stepped closer. We leave together. He shook his head. No, you have to stay. You're the only one who can expose them. I'll be the decoy. I won't let you throw your life away. You're not letting me. I've already chosen. They stood there in the cold, the chimes of the shattered bell groaning faintly. In the wind, Tristan leaned forward, brushed his lips against her forehead. I never stopped loving you, even when I doubted you. And then he was gone down the stairs, into the night. 3 days later, Elara stood before the High Assembly. The council chamber buzzed as she laid out the documents, the evidence, and her testimony. Faces turned pale. Riven, seated in his gilded chair, sneered. This is treason, he spat. This is the truth. She countered. They arrested him before the hour ended, but the victory felt hollow. She had saved the people, dismantled a conspiracy, but she had lost Tristan. He vanished into the shadows that night and was never seen again. Or so she thought. A year later, on the winter solstice, she returned to the cabin to retrieve an old book. Snow covered the ground. As she opened the door, her breath caught. A fire had been lit. The bed had been slept in, and there on the desk lay a new letter. 3 words only. I remember everything. Elara turned, eyes brimming, but the room was empty. Still, her heart beat with something it hadn't held in a year, hope, moral and life lesson. Love built on secrecy is a ticking time bomb. No matter how deep the passion or sincere the loyalty, truth will always demand its reckoning. Trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, and without it, even the strongest bonds can crumble in silence. This story reminds us that courage isn't just in sacrifice, but in honesty, and the greatest betrayals often come disguised as love.